Welcome to the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education Competition Subgroup podcast series. I'm Dan Manson, and it is my pleasure today to have Eric Lopez from EC Council. EC Council runs one of the coolest competitions I have ever seen, and it is on a global scale. This is an international championship. Eric, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Tell me about Cyber Olympics. How did you come up with this goal, and how did you develop it to where it is today?
So Cyber Olympics is like you said, an international competition. Essentially, the way that we run the game is we bring players in from all over the world into what we call an online elimination round. Those players, since it's global, are broken up into regions. And we run that 12-hour continuous round until we break out to the top two teams in each region. From there, we bring all those top two teams from the region out to someplace physical location, and we run the game live until we have the top three teams for the win.
How many years have you been running Cyber Olympics, and does it change each year? Do you add aspects to it?
Yeah, great question. We've been running it since 2011. I took over in 2012, and it's grown year after year. We have between 1,200 and 1,500 players that join in the elimination round, and there are teams of 4 to 6 players per team, and we whittle it down every year to 80 players in the finals. As far as changing it, each year we try to bring different challenges and competitions in to really challenge the players, and it'll shift from pen testing and forensics over to Bitcoin mining or RFID hacking. And a lot of what we do is look at what's going on in the real world and try to mimic some of those hacks that have happened the year before and really bring those into the competition so the players are dealing with real world scenarios.
I had the pleasure of seeing the Cyber Olympics finals several years ago in Washington, D.C. And there are several things that struck me. One of them is that it is a lot more than typing on a keyboard and solving a challenge. You have a very strong physical component to this as well. Can you explain how you combine the physical aspect of the competition with the computer aspect?
For sure, and I'm thank you for noticing that. The name Cyber Olympics really lends itself to allowing for creativity in the technology. For me, I wanted more than just to capture the flag, and you'll see that kind of all over my marketing. I wanted the players to play different, sports like you would ice skating or, tobogganing or, gymnastics, right? In a real Olympics. So you're right. So for example, the year you were there, the teams walked in and there was a safe on the table, and all of their hubs to get onto the game network were in the safe, along with a cell phone, I believe. And they had to crack the safe before they could even get on the game, which puts an interesting dynamic on there because the teams that can crack the safe faster get access to the score bot faster, and then they can start solving challenges and submitting hashes. But the teams that are still stuck opening the physical component took longer to be able to get in there, so they're at a disadvantage. That was a physical component. Obviously, lock picking, you can't have any kind of a hacking conference or competition without some lock picking. So we'll give them X amount of time and dozens of locks, and they get scored based on how many locks they can pick. Each team in this competition doesn't compete against each other like a traditional capture the flag. They're all in their own lane, chasing as many basically flags or hashes that they can get in the score bot. But to break it up, we'll do things like that year. We took one of our game wardens, if you will, went out with one of the players, and the player was given a hard drive, and they had 15 minutes to solve that challenge. The challenge basically stymied a lot of teams because they tried to log in and launch the web page and then hack the web page. They spent almost all their time trying to hack the web page. But if they did some research, there was a known vulnerability in the actual operating system, and there was the hash in that vulnerability. So that was really where the challenge was. So you see things like this in every competition along the way. Last year, the year before, they had to get the numbers off a credit card with what was given into a little lunchbox that was some little physical tools, no computers, but they had to come back to the game master or the command center with the actual credit card number. And so these little physical challenges are things that hackers would do, but they're not necessarily get on and capture a flag or hold the server and pivot to another server. Those things are great, and there's a lot of value in them. But what we try to do is create that, like you said, physical component to say, hey, what other things are hackers really doing in the real world? 2 years ago, we also had a bit mining competition and a Bitcoin mining competition that really set the difference between the first and second place team. Was at the very end who could mine more Bitcoins, those kind of things.
Another thing that struck me is the inclusiveness of your competition. When I was there, you had all the regions of the world represented. You had Africa, you had Asia, you had North America, you had South America, you had Europe. It was so cool to see teams from these regions together. They seemed so happy to be there and doing what they love. I believe you also have a connection with the United Nations on this competition.
Yeah, so my boss has contacts at the ITU, which is the security side of the United Nations, and they helped us really kind of get this launched back in 2011, and that was how we were able to reach out to so many different countries and get the message out. Essentially, was through our support with the ITU division of the United Nations. But you're right, I'm always really surprised, excited, and heartwarmed, frankly, to see the teams that travel from all over the world to the finals. Those guys win against the other teams in their region and whittle it down from anywhere from sometimes a couple of dozen to just being the top one or two. And then some of them, I mean, they're fundraising or they're not all with companies. Some are, but they're not all. And they have to find their way from, far reaches of the globe to get to wherever we have the finals, and they find their way there. We cover the hotels and food, et cetera, but they've got to cover the travel. A team that has a company sponsor like Cisco, KPMG, EY, Deloitte, these teams, the company sends them, but there's a lot of players who make it from universities or just independent they have to find their own way.
Another thing that you do is you include the opportunity for college teams. And you've actually had some college teams do well in the competition. Can you talk about some examples of college teams playing?
Yeah, for sure. We've had, we have college teams that play every year, and we have teams that don't make it past the first round, and some teams that do. We've had a college team, I believe the year that you were there, won out of UMUC. We had a team that made the top two in the North America out of Central Florida University. That team actually had a hard time. They called and said they couldn't come out to the finals in the Netherlands at the time because we were hosting that year in The Hague. And they were concerned about the cost. So we reached out to the college who was a partner of ours, and they didn't have enough money to fund them. So we actually set up a GoFundMe account, and we're able to find a one corporate sponsor that funded the entire team to the Netherlands and back. So, it gets creative. It's fun. We do a lot of cool things to try and make sure everybody gets to play and it's inclusive. And that team came out and did a fine job.
Tell me about EC Council. It's the certification pathways that you have with EC Council, and the variety of certifications are the coolest I've seen. And do you have some synergy going on between Cyber Olympics and EC Council?
Yeah, we have a pretty big member base of certified members because, of course, EC Council is the creators of the Certified Ethical Hacker. We have a pretty popular forensics course. We go through a full pen test track. We've got a lot of really neat things. We're constantly creating new technologies like the Storm Mobile Security Toolkit that we integrate with training, do a lot of things with Raspberry to really get the users hands-on. But the competition itself isn't specifically based on any of those direct fundamentals. It's loosely based on those genres of IT security, forensics, pen testing, defense and offense, et cetera. But at this point, it's not mapped directly to certification. But what we do is we'll reach out to our member base to bring people in to play the competition. I think that's one of the reasons why the competition grows every year is not only do we have more players that come and find us, but we have EC Council got a global reach. So I'm able to go out to my regions throughout the world and have my own country managers go out and push the competition into their region. But I also am able to reach out to my several 100,000 member base of certified members to bring players in to come compete from there as well. So it's a pretty well attended. I think it's a tribute to EC Council's global brand.
I always like to know backstory. So tell us, how did you become involved with cybersecurity?
That's a long story, Dan.
Give me
No,
the short version.
I'll give you a quick one. I was actually came out of college in '92 as a graphic designer. I was quick to software, loved the software. I did a lot of work in graphic design. I grew up as a kid, wanted to be Darren Stevens from Bewitched, going to the advertising graphic design field. So I went out and actually left college, moved to Seattle and did a lot of work did some work for Microsoft and did some stuff for Aldus back in the time. Aldus had freehand, had a pretty good little success there. Did some time in LA at Hot Rod Magazine. And then I kind of came across a company called New Horizons that needed an instructor when I was kind of back in New Mexico, and came in as to teach graphic design classes back in '96. And that was nice and it was cool, but really I found myself much more drawn to the business, and I'd done a lot of business, kind of ventures with offset printing and some different things throughout my earlier career. So the business side was something I was always drawn to. So I went and moved kind of through the ranks of training manager and into sales management. And what ended up happening was I basically I was the first New Horizons instructor to buy his first franchise. So I was on the business side of computer training for years. And in 2006, after I bought my second franchise here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, I met the owner of EC Council and the president, Jay Bavisi, and he was working on bringing he was trying to get an accredited university up in New Mexico. So we kind of had some synergy there. He came out, we worked for a couple of years while I was a franchise owner and delivering his classes and helping him figure out different ways to market his classes and grow CEH, which had just come out at the time, into the New Horizons Olive Centers and the programs. And it just kind of really worked out where I had the opportunity to join EC Council, and I sold my franchise shares over to my partners and came to build direct training for EC Council. And that was kind of my direct, kind of leap into cybersecurity. I'll tell you though, for about 5 years prior to joining, cybersecurity was on my mind. We were doing PIX router classes out of my franchise in El Paso, and just a lot of the security in the late 90s, early 2000s was all predicated on hardware. So of course we made a good amount of money and did a lot of training on those kind of things. But I love the idea, a program called SCP came out, and I was trying to get more into security focus in my training centers. But frankly, back then the marketplace didn't really seem to care too much about security training. We could do lots of Cisco and Microsoft, general training, but not really specific security training. The security training that we focused on at the time was like Microsoft's security course or Cisco's security course, but it wasn't, kind of a vendor agnostic solution out there that was really taken off. So when EC Council came out, the sort of ethical hacker, it kind of really changed that in the industry, and I was immediately drawn to that. So it really kind of worked out where all the stars aligned that I got kind of set up with this company, and it was my pleasure to kind of leave my own opportunity that I was doing in the franchise world to come join EC Council.
It's been my dream for over a decade now that we can turn cyber competitions into a spectator sport. And I think Cyber Olympic lends itself to that because you have both physical activities and you have activities going on the computer. Do you think in the future you would be looking at ways to have the finals play to an audience?
Yeah, I think we've got to. First of all, we do that now on a smaller scale. So I've had the pleasure and the honor of partnering with ISACA for 2 years. Once we did this with their CRX conference in Spain, and then again in DC. And so what we wanted to do, and what ISACA wanted to do, was to bring the competition out so that their conference can get access to come see the hackers live. When we partnered with The Hague in the Netherlands, it was the Security Delta. They put us there as the pinnacle, as there's competition or event for their cybersecurity week, just before the Interpol cybercrimes conference they were running. The idea always is to try and get these alongside a conference so the conference attendees can come and see live hacking. Hacking is a thing that's very ethereal and it's very conceptual and it's very, it's sexy in pop culture and such, but to actually see people do it and understand that this is a room full of hackers, professional and white hat hackers trying to really use their skills to protect data and make their companies more secure it's a really tough thing to kind of picture. So we always try to line this up with the conference so we can bring those attendees over. Same with when we bring them to EC Council's flagship conference, Hacker Halted. We do that usually the day of or the day before, where we can actually bring spectators over to see it. It's not the best attended still. We get a lot more people coming for the conference than for the cyber competition, but I see it getting more and more gaining more and more interest. And I think, like, me and you have talked offline in the past about streaming. Those are the types of things that I think are going to make a difference, is ways to get an audience.
I completely agree. How young do you think we can start students down this path? For me, I want them to look at it as striving to be a professional athlete and play for the major leagues. But in your years of being involved with EC Council, what are the youngest ages you've seen that you think can really start going down this road?
So for the EC Council side, I don't get as much about youth. I don't get as much exposure, because since our stuff is, and our courses, our content is a lot of it's DOD approved, required. It's pretty high end. It's pretty offensive, frankly. And so we have an age limit of 18 or over. Now, when you look at the actual competition out there, there's also obviously there's high school and up competitions all over. I personally think, on a personal level, you could start this training in elementary school. If you look at what's going on in the schools today, you've got kids on Raspberries and PyTops and things doing programming, Python, different basics. They're getting the kids on them. My boys are 13, 15, and they've been touching iPads and computers since before they could really walk. So having them understand the concepts, they're more native to computers than obviously we were, or even the generation before us. So they pick it up really fast, and they understand the concepts because they're just integrating it into their life like a pencil when we were young, or an abacus for those of us who are really old. So I think that you could start it in elementary school. I think it's just a matter of how offensive do you want young children to be without proper guidance. I think it could be dangerous because they're not really conditioned to think about the repercussions of their actions. Is partly why EC Council makes it 18 and over, because of the knowledge we're giving out.
I completely agree with the need for ethics and structure and guidance. There's the old Spider-Man line, with great power comes great responsibility. But I also believe that if we don't have a structured, safe way with ethics built into it, that kids can end up playing in the streets, and it's dangerous to play in the public internet.
Yeah, no, you're solid, 100%. I completely agree with that. And I'm here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, locally, and there's a Sam's Academy, and there's some other charter type schools that are based on science and math, and they have Cyber Patriot right in the school. They've got a lab. The kids are learning how to go in there and in a secure environment, practice these hacking techniques. I think it's guidance is really the key. On the AC Council certification side, we've got something we call iLabs, which is a secure sandbox when you can go in there and practice, the concepts we're teaching them, and that's fine. Even our tests are moving to live range tests, etc.
Tell us about this year's competition. It really looks cool, and I think registration just started.
Just opened up, yeah. We were able to partner with the city of Oshawa, I'm sorry, and then we're also with Durham College and a company called CyberX out in Canada. Oshawa is just outside Toronto, to give you perspective on that. So they've got a new AI center that the city is really trying to really get a security edge and a technology edge. That's their mantra. So they wanted to bring us out, and they're super excited to showcase the world's best hackers and host them and really get a lot of attention on it. So yeah, we're super excited about this year's games as well.
What else would you like to say to the audience? I think what you're doing is really cool, and I would love for your competition to get more visibility and be able to be a teaching platform and a motivational platform for those interested in becoming cybersecurity professionals. What else would you like to say to the audience?
Well, obviously, here's my plug to come play. Come play. We want everybody to come play. And I think here's the thing I would say. What I've learned over the last several years of doing this competition, I have a different perspective when I first started. It looks like a cool marketing event and something that I could get behind. But when I talk to the players, and you touched on it earlier about the excitement, the energy that they bring, the night before the competition, they all show up for a check-in and get the uniforms, and they put them on right on the spot, and they take pictures with each other, and it gets really exciting. But think about it from this perspective. you know, a lot of people in the professional security industry, they're training and certifying. It's an industry requirement. They're going to college, they're getting their degrees, they're learning their knowledge, they're trying to get hands-on. All that training and all that preparation is designed to really go into a job where you can, you know, make a good salary and have a good family. But what's the objective? Be able to protect your company's data at some level. That's the real bottom line objective. What better place to really apply what you've been practicing and learning and training for than competition? Being able to come out to a competition and execute the knowledge that you've been working on. That's what I would say to players. I don't know if enough people on the professional side are realizing that, you know, if you look at Monster, if you look at job boards, they're asking if you've been playing in competitions and how you've done. Why are they asking that? If you look at 85, 70, 81, 40 for the DoD, those directives are now looking at moving towards, can you do it? Can you prove you can do it? It's nice to say you're certified, but rote memorization and passing a test doesn't mean you could do the job. And the industry is finding that more and more. So this is another way to prove that you have the skills to actually do what your certification or your education title says that you can actually do.
This has been a wonderful chat with you, Eric. I wish you the best with Cyber Olympics and EC Council in the future, and I hope to see you in Canada.
Oh yeah, I hope you can come out, and I really appreciate the time, Dan, and everything that you've done for this industry. Honestly, CyberFed's a really great platform, and just having the opportunity to be on with you today has been a pleasure.
Thank you. This has been the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education Competition Subgroup podcast.